Welcome to Tank Month, where we'll be painting up wargaming tanks for a few different game systems, because is it really an army if it doesn't have a tank or two in it? Let's wax poetic about that as we take an opportunity to answer a question that pops up over and over again in the comments. But how do Warpaints Air, Warpaints Fanatic, and Speedpaints work together? A tank is a great way to showcase just that, and today, Thomas is in studio painting a Space Marine Gladiator from Games Workshop's Warhammer 40,000 game system. Let's get after it. Prime your model however you like. We're painting this tank primarily yellow, so we're beginning with a coat of matte white air primer. To save even more time, you could use our color primer spray Demonic Yellow. You'll also note that we're painting this tank in sub-assemblies. The turrets and grav tracks have all been kept separate to make painting this tank easier. We'll begin by applying some pre-shading with Warpaints Air Magnolia Brown. Thomas is spraying this into some of the areas we want to create the illusion of a shadow. Lower parts of the tank's armored panels and other recessed pockets are good indicators for this technique. We'll follow that up with Witchbane Plum from our air range. Purple is an ideal contrast color to yellow, so this will add more visual interest and contrast when we get to those colors later on. We'll use this to layer in between the white base coat and Magnolia Brown to extend those shadows. Thomas will follow that up by re-establishing the highlights on the edges and broader panels with Warpaints Air Matte White, leaving some of the Witchbane Plum and Magnolia Brown shadows remaining. This helps to ensure that when we lay down that yellow later on, it's as bright and vivid as possible where we want it to be. Speaking of almost yellow, we'll use Incursion Orange. This is the darkest color from the Warpaints Air Yellow Triad, and we'll lay this as an airbrush base coat. Because of the transparency that's inherent to airbrushing, you see some of those pre-shadows at work, really giving this model contrast and depth. We'll brighten this up and reinforce the yellows with highlights of Demonic Yellow from the air range. This is a color match to the Warpaints Fanatic and color primer of the same name. Just apply this to the center of the panels and all of the hard edges on the tank. We'll move on to the other colors for this model, and depending on your scheme or chapter that you've chosen, you can use whatever color you wish. We're doing this one with black to keep it simple, because we're still army painting here, and there's a lot more we'll need to paint to finish this army. An airbrush highlight of Raven Black over matte black primer is all we'll need before we move on to the brushwork. Thomas is using a Wargamer Regiment brush for our initial highlights. We're using Warpaints Fanatic Space Dust, a light yellow that will help to define the edges and details with an edge highlight. If you've never tried edge highlighting before, or you've been too nervous to try it on another model, a tank is actually a really great way to learn. The well-defined hard edges make for perfect practice. Load your brush and simply trace the edge, not the tip, along the edges, leaving a perfectly defined highlight on your miniature, just like that. We'll refine those edges even further by reinforcing those highlights with Ice Yellow and a Wargamer Detail brush. This is the next brightest color in the Fanatic Yellow color triad progression. To highlight all of the black pieces of the tank, use Uniform Gray, using the same edge highlighting technique as before. And for some of the more detailed bits, like the tank's grav tracks, grab your preferred dry brush. Mine happens to be one of our dome-shaped Masterclass dry brushes, but Thomas likes to use these flat-angled Wargamer dry brushes, and use the dry brushing method to quickly highlight those pieces. If you haven't tried the dry brushing method before, there are plenty of tutorials on the internet, and even some on our channel, so if you haven't already, now's a great time to go subscribe and go check out some of the awesome instructional videos we have for you. Just excuse all of the videos of our founder Bo twerking. It was a weird phase that we were going through. Moving on, we'll use Speedpaint Grim Black as a simple base coating tool for all of the areas on the miniature that we want to be painted metallic in later steps. Carefully apply this, doing your best not to cover any of the areas that we want to keep yellow. Then use Warpaints Fanatic Plate Mail Metal as our first metal base coat over the Grim Black Speedpaint. Thomas is using our new Dippets brush. This blue handle brush is a fine synthetic that will only be found for now as a free brush inside future box sets. We're really enjoying using it so far and think you will too. After applying your base coats, we'll continue on with the metallics using our Wargamer small dry brush to apply an overbrush base coat to areas like the gun barrels and other bits on the miniature. While that's drying, we'll prep all of the lenses with Fanatic Matte White. Take your time here. In most cases, one coat will do, but apply a second thin coat if necessary. We'll wash down all of the metallics with a wash of Fanatic Dark Tone, This wash is a specially designed paint to add shading and definition to detailed areas on your miniature. Apply a generous coat of it and watch as the deeper pigments run into the recesses. A wash is the simplest way to add shading and contrast to your miniature. Make sure to work those pigments into the details, but don't let it pool too much or else you'll get a gloopy, glossy finish. Let your wash dry and grab some of the new glow effects from the Fanatic range. These fluorescent paints give the illusion of glowing lenses, nodes, and powers. They work a lot like a hybrid wash or speed paint while giving those powered up details a vibrant, punchy effect. Power Node Glow here is a nice fluo pink that works really nicely with our yellow tank. With that done, go ahead and reassemble your grav tracks, plop on your turret, and it's time to mimic your favorite gravatic engine noises and pew-pews for the tabletop. To finish off your mini, we advise giving it a seal of matte or satin varnish, gloss if you like your models shiny, all of which can be found in our spray, air, and paint ranges. To learn more about the products used in today's tutorial, and for our full range of high quality paints and accessories designed to make miniature painting simple, fast, and fun, learn more at your friendly local game store, preferred online retailer, or at www.thearmypainter.com.